Hey folks, welcome to verifiedinvesting.com. My name is Gareth Soloway, Chief Market Strategist here. In today's video, we're going to deep dive into the latest action on Bitcoin based on purely technical analysis, ultimately looking at probabilities. Are we headed up or are we headed down? Right into the chart right now. This is the Bitcoin chart, the daily chart. Notice nothing but a candlestick chart. And the idea here, folks, is I want to walk you through how I find my levels and how we determine what the probabilities are telling us. So first and foremost, we have to go back to our big major line. We go to our weekly chart. And what determined and what allowed me to call the top recently on Bitcoin was this trend line here. I simply connected all the major pivot highs and they all align perfectly. So what we're doing here is we're taking the 2017 high of the bull market. We're connecting it through the highest point in 2021 right here. All right. Notice how if you did it to the second top, then it would actually pierce the line. Notice right here. See how it pierces? So what we're doing is we're taking it to that very top. Then we're extending it out. And lo and behold, what do we get? Look at this, guys. I mean, I think this is the coolest stuff ever, is that you connect these highs and you literally get this high in July of 2025, the new all-time high in August, and then right here, the latest top in late September, early October. Now, flipping back to the daily chart, we can see again, there's those lines, and we can even zoom out and look at this on the daily chart. There's that high from 2021 and the high from 2017. It's really remarkable, right? To think that, we think Bitcoin is arbitrary and, it goes up how it wants to go up and it goes down when it wants to go down. Yet ultimately, what are we finding? We're finding that there's actually some seasoned kind of, register. There's some seasoned kind of mantra where this chart kind of hits and goes to before it pulls back. And it's abided by this trend line since 2017. That is remarkable to me. Again, order within chaos. I think that's the proper term. All right. So we have our upside resistance, right? So if we were to rally back, technical analysis says that if we got up to this trend line, which is around 127,000, that would be the major level to beat. Doesn't mean we can't break above it at some point, but at least for now, based on technical analysis, we must respect that level. Doesn't matter if you're a bull or a bear. If we go up there, you got to respect the level until proven otherwise. All right. Next up, let's take a look here. So what we're looking at here is there's a new trend line that I found here, and this is a big one here, folks, because if we connect these lows through this low, it actually gives us a very important factor here. Now, if we look at this, what do we see? We see that the chart of Bitcoin has basically been holding this area here all along this trend line. And this was creating what we call in technical analysis a wedge, which is price consolidating tighter and tighter until one direction breaks. Now, what's caught my eye here is that this line actually extends even further out, right? I mean, it even goes back to these highs and so on and so forth. So that's important. But more than anything, this line has multiple parallels to it that signifies its importance, all right? And what do I mean by that? Well, if we take this, right, if we look at the lows here and we connect these lows, what are we finding? We're finding that there's a secondary kind of consolidation trend line that has worked to denote price action right here. All right. And again, if we look at this, what do we see? Again, let's get it as currently accurate as possible. This line is parallel to this line. Let me flip and change the color on that so we can really see how these two lines are parallel, right? Line here, line here. And notice how on this line, right? And by the way, this probably extends all the way back to a major pivot over here, but for this study, it's not that important. But what we see here is we have a very defined level here where price hits. So underneath it hits, pulls back. Here it goes above, hammers, goes higher, comes back and retests that line. Then it goes away, makes this all-time high, second all-time high, pulls back, kisses, goes up, hits the line right there, makes a new all-time high, and then comes down right here. And this is where things get interesting. We hit it, we bounced, and then we broke. All right, so what does that mean in technical analysis terms? Well, number one, we look to see, did we confirm the breakdown? To confirm the breakdown, we have one close below, and basically what you have to do is you have to close below the low of that breakdown candle. And in that case, we did. So this is a confirmed breakdown. What does that mean? It means that this line right here, which was former support here, here, and all the way back, all the way over here and here, this now becomes major resistance. In other words, if price were to continue to bounce, and it is bouncing, and we get into this zone, the odds are it would get rejected to the downside. Now, again, remember what probability is. Probability is what technical analysis is telling you when you do it correctly. What it tells us is what is most probable. It doesn't mean that it's always correct because we know any level can fail, but it tells us the odds favor this action. And that's so important for us as traders because ultimately, what are we trying to do? We're trying to position ourselves on the higher probability scenario over and over and over again. And if we do that, let's say we win 70, 75, 80% of the time, the idea is we should be able to grow our portfolio, whether it's crypto, stocks, commodities, or anything. We should be able to grow that over time by winning way more than we lose and still understanding you're still going to have losses, right? We all do. But the idea again is that if you do that, you grow your portfolio versus just guessing or going with emotion, which is what most investors and traders do. So going back to this, we understand that if price rallies up, resistance is now going to be around 111,000 to 112,000, this trend line, right? The odds would favor a rejection off of that and ultimately a move to this lower parallel, right? You can see here, look at how when we broke this trend line to the downside, right, we came back up and it was rejected, and that's how we made that low. And then finally we got above. As long as we're below, what's your next big support? Right here around 95,000, 96,000, give or take. So that's your probability for this chart, is that we would see that move to the downside. All right. Now, would that be a major buyable level? The answer is yes, it would. Why? Well, because it's really the uptrend, right? From the bear market in 2022, where we bottomed out on Bitcoin around 16,000, 17,000, right down here, we then have started to move up. And these are connecting your lowest points, right? If we extend this out, look, no other line since, I mean, really historically, even based on how steep this is dropping, has ever gone below this line. And so what we have to say is that if you did fall into this level, that would be a buyable opportunity on Bitcoin because it has shown us historically, right? Historically here and here and here, that is what happens. You hit it and you ultimately go up. You hit it and then you go up. All right. So now we always have to look at both scenarios, right? In terms of, okay, just like if we were to break above the high probability rejection zone of that 111, 112,000 level, well, where would we go? And the odds would favor then probably a new all-time high at the 127,000 level, right? That's that upsloping trend line going back to 2017. So that's looking on both sides. And I really want to stress this. As a technician, you need to look at both sides. You can't just go into a trade and be like, oh, well, this is a no-brainer. I'm going to win at this trade, right? That's what people do, and then they get clobbered. And one might work a few times, and you make a lot of money going all in on something, but it's that one time that it doesn't work that can make you go broke. And so the idea is you always want to know your counter thesis, right? So your thesis is your higher probability scenario, but your counter thesis tells you that if it doesn't work, what is my risk, or where do I stop out of the trade, right? And so looking at this, here again, like I said, right, if we break above this level, then you could easily go up and test here. That would make sense, right? I mean, you'll have a few stopping points along the way, but we would have broken back above this, and we could see that once we broke above it in the past, eventually we went up to make a new all-time high. Okay, now on the way down, if it gets rejected here, this would be our support. Now, what happens if that breaks? What happens, right? We have to look at our counter thesis. So the thesis is that if we come down to 95, 96,000, it's a buyable level. What if it breaks? If it breaks, number one, you want to stop out with confirmation below that level. That's number one. Just take the loss. Small losses, they are going to happen, and you have to just accept it. As a trader, it's so hard to accept, by the way. I still struggle with it to this very day, just being open and honest with you guys. Like, it is hard to be like, nope, I was wrong. Because you always think like, oh, as soon as I get out, it's going to go in my direction. But sometimes it does. But it's protecting your capital, right? And so going back to this chart, if we break here, what's our next level? Well, what we do is we take these lows here from 2022 and we connect it to this new point of interest. All right. Now, this is really interesting, right? Because if we look at this, you can almost make a case that you're kind of inching towards potentially a parallel with that upper trend line. In fact, let's do that. Let's just see what happens here. So let's remove all these extra little circles here, all right, that we have on the charts where I was denoting where things hammered. And let's look at what would be the parallel from 2017, All right, this is going to be remarkable, folks. In fact, I actually haven't done this parallel before, but it's got to be done. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to put a parallel line over this one. So we'll keep the trend line, but we're just going to match it up, right? And then we're going to drop the parallel down. And what we see here, look at this. This is cool stuff. So what we see here is that if you go down here, look, high pivot, broke above, support, pierced, and then it went up. And so that gives us a little basis. But in reality, this can be used, this parallel, to guide us to our levels. Like, for instance, look at this. Look at this. Wow, look at this. All right, so what we see here on this parallel, and this is, I'm actually doing this for the first time, is look at these lows. Here you did pierce it briefly, but then you respected it right there, and respected it right through here. And so this starts to give us lower levels. But what I was talking about before is you have to go to your lowest point, right? In theory, like if we talk about Armageddon for Bitcoin, which I know if you're a bull, listen, I'm a huge long-term bull, but I always like to look at my worst case scenario. Worst case scenario, look at this. Look at this. It literally lines up perfectly. So that is your worst case scenario. Like, and listen, trust me, I understand people are going to be up in arms. Oh my goodness, like that's just the way people get because they're emotionally attached, which I get. I mean, it's a lot of money for a lot of people, but I always have to look at this. And what this is telling me is, look, first of all, look at how perfectly that aligns with the bear market lows in 2022 right here, and then the lowest point here. I mean, that is incredible that it perfectly aligns with this trend line. The idea is if you had an Armageddon scenario on Bitcoin, what's your kind of worst case scenario? It's probably 55K, maybe 50K touch on a panic flush, but that would be your worst case. Now listen, it doesn't mean it's going to go back there, but look at this too. Look at how cool this is. If we draw a trend line through those lows from here, right through these lows of this consolidation, look at what it matches up with. And that's your bogey level. All right. So listen, I myself, if we drop to this 95, 96,000 level, I'm going to be trying to buy. However, I'll do my best to keep a tight stop with any confirmation below. I'll probably nibble a little around 75,000, maybe as even a long-term hold. But really, where am I? If it ever comes back to 55K, holy cow, 50 to 55K. Look at the parallel from, I mean, you can't deny that if it's a trend line and it's a parallel that goes back to literally basically your second bull market ever at Bitcoin, right? I think you had one in 2012, 2013, but again, the 4-year cycle, right? So then it was 2017, then 2021, etc. But ultimately, if we ever get back to this trend line, holy cow, I'm going to be loading the boat right there. And again, doesn't mean it's going to come back there. By the way, look at this. I just saw this too. Look at this. Oh, man. Do you guys see this? Look at this. Let me get rid of that. High pivot, high pivot, high pivots, high pivots, high pivot, low pivot. See right there? You broke above and retested. And look, they all coordinate. In other words, at least for me, listen, I can only speak for myself. Everyone here makes their own decisions. We're all big boys and big girls, right? But for me, if you get down to 55, 50K, I'm backing the truck up at that level. And a lot of us, I'm sure, would do it. I mean, at least right now, the crazy thing about this is that if we get to that point where we're at 50K, most people will be too scared to buy. That's where charts come in. Just like the greed at 26,000 was palatable, like literally you could taste it, right? The same thing on the reverse, right? And that was the high 26K-ish, give or take. Now we're coming back down to 55, 50K. People will be so fearful that most people won't buy there. Because I use the charts, I'll be buying like crazy. All right, anyways, kind of listen, we've really gone over a lot in this video, but I think it's really worthwhile to look at the charts. The charts can tell us so much about long-term projections, short-term, and to be clear, we're still in a long-term uptrend in Bitcoin, and I expect that to continue. But in the shorter term, bear markets will happen. We know the 4-year cycle, although it's arguable whether it's, so far it's held true. We'll have to see if it continues to be held true, but that means that we are probably now getting towards, right? 2021 was our last bull market. That means 2025 into 2026, we're topping out. Where do we pull back to? 50 to 55K. Is it possible? We'll see. Have a great one, guys. Thanks so much for tuning in. Appreciate your kind words. My job here is to educate and give you guys other thoughts based on pure probability. Levels that I love based on the charts, not because of my own emotion, but because of the charts. Have a great one. Take care.